What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Taking a Breath video highlights. If this is your first time, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Taking a Breath Podcast, and you can check out the full audio version linked below. Hope you enjoy the interview. Chance to hear a lot of your kind of just an overview of your story, and so I would love to kind of start from the beginning. Like, where did this all start for you? How did you get to kind of where you are today? I'd love for you to share a little bit about that.
Man, I think a lot of it was by accident. Like I would love to say that I had this like big strategy and like figured out the 7 laws of life or whatever it is. But I mean, a lot of it is, I think in general, I wasn't very afraid to fail. Part of that reason was I was such an awful student.
Okay.
As a kid, I had, and still today, I have just like crippling dyslexia. As an 11-year-old, I couldn't write my alphabet by myself without help. I still to this day have about a 6th grade reading comprehension. And so going through school, if you're not able to pass and you're not able to keep up, you learn to tell yourself a different story, or just accept the story that you're being given, which is that you're inadequate. And so I think a lot of it is just, I whatever that thing is that makes people afraid of failing, I don't necessarily have it the same way.
Yeah.
And, Parker, the other part is I grew up in an entrepreneurial family where, you don't eat unless you sell something. And so that level of work ethic, plus just sort of in general, not being very afraid of failure or people's perception of failure, really made, I would say probably made the biggest difference for me.
For you, what's the key to that next level of personal development? No matter where people are at. Yeah.
You got to know where you are, and you got to be able to tell the truth about where you are. And for me, that's been some of the hardest work, is going, you know what? There's been times in my life where I've had to go, you know what? I am not being a good husband. I'm not being a good dad. I'm not being a good friend. I'm not being a good whatever, right? And the awareness to say, I am not being who I want to be, that's where you have to start. It's the Alcoholics Anonymous thing, right? Like the first way to start fixing a problem is to admit you have one.
Yeah.
And there's this thing that, and I was in a meeting earlier today and teaching on this, is there's a gap for all of us between what we intellectually know and believe and what we practically do. And so most people see themselves based on their intellectual beliefs, right? What I know. We don't judge ourselves based on what we do, because we can make an excuse, we can justify.
Yeah.
The example I gave is coming from the furniture industry. I know way more than the average person knows about sleep science, sleep quality. And I sold on that stuff for 20 years in my career. And I know for sure one thing, that if you want to get a good night's sleep, if you want to live well, then you cannot just before bed consume any sort of stimulants. So like coffee, caffeine, sugar. Yet 2 nights ago, I know this intellectually. I completely know this without a shadow. This is universally true. This isn't just true for me and you, and this is true for everybody. Yet 2 nights ago, it's 10:30 at night, and I'm sitting on my sofa eating 4 Oreos 10 minutes before I go to bed, right? So what is that?
Right.
I know it, but I don't do it.
Okay.
Right. And so the awareness of what is it that I know and what is it that I'm not doing, and starting there from a standpoint of awareness, is really the first step. And if you can do that and you have the courage to look at yourself and go, in what ways am I being inconsistent? And then focusing on those.
Yeah. Taking the first steps. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that action items, that's something that I love to talk about, because so many people, especially like, right. And we talked about a little bit that the age group of my listeners is in general, that kind of like 18 to 21, where it's really just getting started in life. Right. But so many people talk about, I'm going to wait till I'm out of college, or I'm waiting till everything lines up. Like you're saying, till somebody gives you permission. What's your advice for someone that's right there coming out of the gate, that doesn't know yet?
So I would say I would even back that up a few years. My daughter is an exceptional example of this right now. So my daughter will be 9 years old in September. She said to us a couple of months back, she said, I want to be, and you know, as kids, we do this all the time. I want to be blank. I want to be a fireman or, you know, whatever.
Yep.
And so she says, I want to be a wedding dress designer. Like she fell in love with this idea of designing wedding dresses. So we said, cool. What is the first thing you can do to explore that? Whether you become it or not, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
she goes, well, I probably should learn how to sew. And I said, okay, baby, I don't know how to sew. Mommy doesn't know how to sew. So you got to figure it out. So she
Yeah.
found a one of her friends, grandma lives with them in our neighborhood. My daughter wrote her a letter and said, and her grandma is like a master seamstress. So she wrote a letter and said, hey, I'm interested in learning to sew. Would you have any advice or any way I could learn? Like, how would you advise me to do this? And the person's grandma wrote back and said, I'd be happy to help you. And so now she's taking sewing classes right now as a 9-year-old, and her goal is to make uh, clothing for American Girl dolls and sell it in the neighborhood.
That's
And is
awesome.
that going to make her a fashion designer? Is that going to make her a famous dress designer? I mean, maybe, but if she
Yeah.
doesn't do it, if she doesn't take the first step, how does she get to the fifth step? You don't,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
this is also true with, you know, I think the more people will, especially early in career, stop thinking about what should I do and start thinking about what am I here to do. And when I
Yep.
say here to do, what I mean is, what am I uniquely gifted in? What are the things that come easy to me in terms of talent, and how can I strengthen those talents and find a way to really contribute? So,
Yeah.
so the idea came from when I was in college. I only got into college because I was an athlete. I did not have a GPA that was. In fact, when I came into college, it turned out that I did not have a GPA. And so, like, really think through that. I did not have one, and so I
Yeah.
had to redshirt. The NCAA clearinghouse wouldn't approve me to be a college athlete, so I had to earn my first GPA. And
Wow.
so the clearinghouse at that time, I'm not sure if the rules have changed or not. I don't think they have, but you had to have a 1.8 GPA to be eligible to play an
Okay.
NCAA Division I sport. And so I had one
Yep.
semester to get a 1.8 or better. The first semester came, and I got a call from the admissions office, and they told me that I had gotten a 1.4, which they also informed me that 1.4 is not as good as a 1.8, right? And so I
Right.
was told that I had one more semester, and if I
Okay.
was not able to get to a 1.8, I would lose my scholarship. I was going to go home. And I was asked to go to my academic advisor's office. And the very, very short story is through the experience with my advisor and her willingness to disrupt my emotional and psychological patterns of just sabotaging myself. She helped me to see different ways of thinking and different ways of achieving. So in a single semester and working with her, I went from a 1.4 to a 3.4. And that is something
Wow.
I had never done. And when that
Yeah.
happened, you would think that I would have been really excited. I wasn't, man. I was so terrified because I had
Wow.
to admit that I was the person that held me back. And that it was, yeah, I mean, we have to recognize when we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we
Mm.
always are, you know, like one of my, maybe this is because I have a 9-year-old daughter, one of my favorite Disney movies is Moana, right? And one of the things that you see that sort of a tradition in their I forget what their tribe is, they have the rocks. Every king kind of puts a rock on that little mountain, and you see these rocks pile up.
Yep.
And that's a really good example of what's happening is all I'm doing is putting my rock on top of the stack that was there before me.
Wow.
And if I do it well, then somebody else gets to come along and start a bit higher, you know? And that doesn't mean that the people that came before me owe me anything. It means I have a responsibility to the next person that's coming. Because if I don't do the things, it's like this. A lot of times what people do is they talk to themselves differently than they talk to the people that they really love the most.
Mm,
So as an example, if I think about the people I love the absolute most are the people that live in my house, my daughter, my
right.
son, my wife. And if any of the three of them would come to me and they would say, "Hey, I'm really feeling I'm feeling insecure. I want to I want to do better at this thing, but I'm really afraid."
Yep.
I'm going to tell them, "Hey, be gentle with yourself. You know, be kind with yourself. Try it. It doesn't have anything to do with your identity if you fail. It's just a data point. Like try it, fail, try something else. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tie that to your identity for all time." Yet a lot of people instead when they ask themselves, "Hey, I want to get better at this or I want to do this," they go, "Nah, you're not good enough. You're not
Wow.
smart enough. You're going to fail. And when you fail, everybody's going to laugh at you." I wouldn't say that I mean, could you imagine the kind of father I'd be if I say that to my 9-year-old daughter? But how
Wow.
often do we say it to ourselves? So
That's
if we
so
just
true.
talk to ourselves like somebody we actually loved, it would free us so much to be able to take the next step.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's video highlights. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Taking a Breath Podcast, subscribe, like, and check out the full audio version linked below if you're interested in more from this interview.